Psst, hey you, do you even know what the typical day of a procurement person looks like? You might think to yourself, well, what do I care? I'm not in that seat. But maybe you're selling to them, so why wouldn't you want to know, right? Why are you not getting some replies? Maybe it's because you don't know what the priorities are of a procurement person every day. So let's go through it. Let's start with 8 a.m. That's what I usually did. Was I came in and I had three things that I wanted to do during the day. And this could be usually one of three things that from like different areas of the business. One was a stakeholder negotiation or communication, developing a strategy on how to approach some sort of business that we wanted to source. So it could be combining businesses of Mexico, the United States, and Canada as an example. It could be developing timelines on when it would make sense to strategically go out to the market, or developing a strategy on contract length and the scope of a contract as well. What has worked in the past? What are the market trends? And how can we all bring this together? And these are usually discussions that you're having with finance and the business unit, so the end user together. So that would be number one. That is more on a strategic side, right? So I would usually have one of those as my key priority of the day. Um, and then I have two others, which would be negotiations, right? So carrying maybe a bid out and you're going into a negotiation. And surprisingly, maybe you knew this, but maybe you didn't. Maybe 5% on average of the whole time is an actual negotiation. The rest of it is the third bucket, which is preparation. And the time spent in the negotiations are obviously the one that moves the needle the most. And we're not just talking about, hey, instead of $10, I'm going to pay you $9. No, that's not really it. A negotiation is talking about contract terms. How can we make this work for both of us? How can you make a supplier profitable? Getting a lot of information from them. Maybe 90% of times in a negotiation, I was actually asking questions instead of setting a target or telling my suppliers what I wanted. And so as you can see, the third bucket, which is leading to that, and I think I always wanted to start a day out with that, is preparation for something upcoming, right? So either you are going to have a negotiation that is upcoming for a bid that you're going through, or you're preparing for a discussion with a current supplier who is maybe struggling with their current performance, or they having some complaints, they're asking for a price increase, and you're preparing for that. You want to know exactly, okay, what is happening internally? Maybe we did something different than what we promised the supplier that we would be doing, and we now actually need to pay them more, right? So it's not only about, hey, we're always beating up the suppliers. No, maybe they're right in asking for a price increase. So that's usually how I started my day out, with that preparation piece. And then, so let's say 8 to 10 a.m. is that preparation piece. After that, you have maybe 15 minutes of slack where you relax, and then the negotiations or the strategy sessions, the internal negotiations, actually take place. And you might notice that I didn't even mention answering any phone calls or going through my emails. And I really didn't want to do that, because that is usually reactive work. It is not me proactively deciding where I am creating most value for the company. And that might be one of the reasons why, at least from me, you didn't get a lot of replies in the morning. And then once maybe I have carried out my first negotiation, or I have gone through a strategy session, I would maybe look at my emails first time by 11 a.m. 11 a.m. I would take 10-20 minutes to go through my emails and then really filter through, okay, what is creating some value, right? Some immediate value for the business, and not answering anything that is not that. Also, maybe a very important tip here for some of the other procurement professionals. It might sound a little bit harsh, but there are a lot of problems that you find in your emails that the longer you don't reply to, the less it becomes your problem, and poof, they just go away by the next day. Because for some reason, people just try to, specifically stakeholders, and I'm sorry, stakeholders, that I'm saying this, they face a problem. Before thinking about how they can resolve it, they shift it over to procurement and make it their problem. So a strategy that I used, and I'm going to admit to that very openly, is for problems where I thought, okay, this can be resolved by somebody else very, very quickly if they just think a little bit, then I would just ignore those emails. So that's just a little bit of a tip here. Okay, then by 12, I used to take a break, either have lunch or go for a walk or go to the gym, right, for 1 hour. So then if I went to the gym, then afterwards I would probably have lunch while I was looking at maybe some industry reports. So the afternoon either starts with a bang, so another negotiation, or you just do some thinking work, which I also think is very, very underestimated. And a lot of people are stacking their calendars by too much. So sometimes from 1 to 2 p.m. I would just schedule a meeting with myself, and I would think through the things that happened in the morning and how they would have an impact on my strategy going forward. And then 2 to 3 p.m. or 2 to 4 p.m., maybe schedule some additional stakeholder conversations. You get a pulse of the business, you understand what is really worrying them, and then you do some expectation management and also calm people's expectations and worries a little bit, right? Maybe a supplier, you really do a lot of an open door approach, maybe in the afternoons, where people can come to you. You let them know up front, okay, here, these are my open office hours, come to me and we'll talk about things. And that way, it might seem to be a little bit unstructured because I started this with a very structured approach in the morning, but this is where you get the pulse of what are people worried about, what is going on in the business. As you know, manufacturing businesses change every day, and there you get really these important and urgent things that you need to shift your immediate attention to, where all strategy and all the plan that you had for the morning really goes out the window. And that happens, and it's also fine. But sometimes if there's a production stop or you cannot deliver the product to the end consumer, that really needs to shift immediately to that. And I have to say that during these morning hours, I would not be available on any messengers, and my phone would be in focus mode, but there are certain numbers that would always go through, right? So that would be my boss's number, or maybe the CEO would be able to call me, or maybe an important business stakeholder that needs to reach me anytime, right? So you have to be strategic, yes, but then you also have to make sure, I always said that, you need to be able to survive the short term to be able to get to the long term, right? So these are, I think, very important things that you need to do, where you can be strategic, not be available to some people, but then be available to important people that are also very, very respectful of your time. And that is also, I think, an important strategy, is you can feel out over time which people are really respectful of your time, and give them the privilege of always being able to reach you, because they will not abuse that. Okay, going back to the schedule. 2 to 4 p.m., as I said, we're getting a little bit of a pulse of the business. And then from 4 to 5 p.m., I would maybe for 15-20 minutes, check my emails again, and then maybe have a one-on-one with some of the teammates or with my boss and so forth. And then in theory, the day is over. What I have to say is some of the spreadsheet work and some of the really detailed work for my brain really works well during the evening hours. And I have 2 kids, so I know that is sometimes very tough, but I used to, and I know it sounds unhealthy, but I would just get a lot of things done, and my next day would just be filled with way less anxiety. I would sometimes work from 10 to 11 p.m. and do spreadsheet work, do really important data analysis where I compare suppliers, their offers, our strategy. I would prepare business cases during these hours. Not every day, really, don't get me wrong, maybe twice per month. But in that hour, I would get so much done. Maybe you're asking yourself if that's also a good strategy for the morning. For me, it's not. I really want to protect my sleep. I'm a later sleeper and I also like to sleep in. So doing that in the morning could also be good, but I need my brain to switch on a little bit. I'm a little bit of a slow starter. I don't want it to be distracted in the morning. So getting up at 6 a.m. or at 5 a.m. is really not an option right now for me at this stage in life. I want to protect my sleep. But this is for me what a day of a procurement person would look like. And if you think about it now from the viewpoint of a supplier, you have maybe a 30-45 minute window where you can get access to your procurement person. And now that you know, and I didn't even account for any curveballs that are thrown in there, now that you know this, what can you do? Well, maybe ask your procurement person when is the best time to call them or send them an email. Very easy first step, right? And then also, what I said, earn the trust. Earn the trust of being able to contact them at times that others can't. And that is just by being respectful. Being very, very respectful of their time and being a good supplier in that case, right? Because we're talking from the supplier perspective. All right, that's the day of a procurement person here for you. And if you're struggling with your procurement processes or with sales to procurement, then I suggest you visit www.21consulting.xyz and apply for a free consultation with me. I would love to talk to you soon. Have a great day.